like I said, I heard the pop hits when I was probably a little bit younger. But
Sure.
when I was 25, it was actually a pretty bad period in my life.
Okay.
I had just gotten off a freelance job and was looking for something better, but I was out of shape, overweight, unhappy with where I was professionally, personally, broken up with somebody. And I kind of took one last stand and I decided that I was going to just do everything possible to get back in shape, to get the best job I could, and to really fulfill my potential. And a lot of those themes are pretty present, I think, across Darkness on the Edge of Town. And it was an album that just really resonated with me, the earnestness. You probably have a lot of listeners who are, would say that Born to Run is their favorite album, or it's the album
Yeah.
that got them into Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. I don't know. There's a lot of idealism in that album. And
Yeah.
I think I was past that point, frankly. And Darkness on the Edge of Town is sort of about acknowledging that idealism, not wanting to let go, and seeing where you have to compromise, as we were sort of talking about compromise earlier. But just trying to find a better life for yourself and seeing what's important to you and taking that stand. As I think he literally actually says on the title track.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and joining me from the great state of Jersey is Dan Levinsohn. I hope I said the last name correct.
You did. Not many people do.
Well,
So
I got lucky. How you doing?
good. It's good to be speaking with you.
It is great to be speaking with you. So Dan, tell us a little about yourself.
I grew up here in Bergen County in Oradell. I would like to say that I escaped and made it to the city. That was the goal, and it's what I did in terms of going to college. Went to NYU, and then I worked at NBC actually for about 8 years. So all
What'd you do
told,
for what'd you do?
various things. I was a producer. I worked with a few Olympics.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, just most
Here in
recently.
you here in the States, or did you actually travel to?
That's the question I get all the time.
Yeah.
I was doing it digitally, so it was behind a keyboard, and
Okay.
with
Yeah.
Tokyo, uh, well, obviously, there's a pandemic going on right now,
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
wanted to
I don't know if
limit
people have
travel.
heard that, but there is one, right?
Yeah. I don't know. You might have heard about it, but it's really not a big deal. Well,
Yeah.
actually, it's a huge deal. I don't
Yeah.
know how to joke about that.
Yeah. I
To be
know.
honest with you.
Well, sometimes we just have to joke about it because I don't know what else to do. Right? It's just
Yeah,
damn.
it's especially the length of it. It's just disrupted so much in terms of normality and what we do on our day-to-day basis, and especially our human interactions. I mean, this is weird. I'm sure you feel that way, just like connecting with somebody over a computer as opposed to like even having a phone call, but especially like going out in person, and things have relaxed. I think we're all sort of afraid of what the winter might bring, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm not the most optimistic person, but I do think that, we may have seen the worst of this and
Yeah. My
things will
hope.
hopefully get better soon.
You know, um, Tomorrow there'll be sunshine and all this darkness past, right? To quote the Jersey poet.
I
I
set them
will.
up. You knock them out of the park. There you go.
Thank you, Dan. So I do. I'm recording this on a Tuesday night, and my wife and I just got back from spending 4 days in New Orleans. And the
Oh,
reason I'm bringing this up is Texas is not like no one in Texas wears a mask, right? Like you go to a restaurant, there's no one wearing a mask. When we went to see the Eagles, um, they had said you have to have proof of vaccination or a negative test to be in. And,
Mhm.
basically, Dan, if you just waved a piece of paper, they didn't care. Every place we went in New Orleans, they stopped us and said, we need to see your vaccination paper.
Oh,
And then
wow.
they looked at it and they actually looked and to see the dates. And I asked, I said, what? And they said, hey, we can't afford to have another shutdown.
Yeah.
The city of New Orleans will go broke if we have to not have it. So my wife and I found that very comforting. We were very good, and so they enforced us, like when you got in a cab you had to have your mask on. When we were in the lobby of the hotel, like we were outside, so we had our masks down and we walked in and they immediately, mask please when you're in the lobby. Like, oh yeah, sure, sure. So they were taking it seriously, and it was good to see.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely noticed that with indoor venues around here.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows when we're on the other side of this, what society is going to look like.
Yeah.
Um, but in the meantime, it's really discouraging. Although, frankly, it makes complete sense. This has become a political issue somehow. It really shouldn't be. It should just be about people's health.
And
And
I don't understand that. I mean, I do, because everything's political now. I mean, um we have a couple of fans that actually not good naturedly debate swaves and waves. But I mean, there's a few people that have their foot stuck in the ground and like it's only this and it can't be anything else. And you're like, really? It's the lyrics of a song. Why would you die on that hill? But I
yeah,
think that's just the nature of society now.
yeah, it makes me think I was fortunate enough. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the
Yeah.
live experiences I've had with Springsteen. I was fortunate enough to go opening night to Springsteen on Broadway this year. So for the reopening,
Oh,
I thought
nice.
I had missed it completely. There are a lot of things. Maybe this is another pandemic related thing, but there are a lot of things I realized in life that may have seemed expensive at the time,
Yeah.
but it costs more in retrospect to have missed that experience.
Yeah.
And I certainly felt that way about Springsteen on Broadway until they brought it back.
Yeah.
Um, and I couldn't believe that I had gotten tickets opening night. And actually, this sort of brings things full circle because um, it was so strange seeing a theater of 2,000 people just totally massless, like normal.
Yeah.
And it was because New York City has done things properly.
Yeah.
Um, they were very thorough in terms of checking your
Yeah.
vaccination card. Um, that said, while we were about to enter, there were all these people protesting outside.
Hmm.
And I think you could even like vaguely hear them from inside the theater towards the beginning of the show before he got on stage.
Hmm.
People were just protesting, why do we have to be vaccinated to see a show? Um, there's just so much divisiveness, and it's very sad. And you're right, it's my way or the highway. Um, and there's no such thing as compromise anymore.
Yeah, you're right. And I promise listeners we'll get off this in a minute, but it was funny because before we hit record, Dan says, I'm really not sure what to expect. And I'm like, we're just gonna have a conversation. It'll just go wherever the conversation takes us. Yeah, I'm amazed at that. And I read, I saw a lot on social media, which has been a blessing and a curse to me. The blessing because it helps me connect to Springsteen fans from around the world and get them on the show, and that's I love. The podcast is a labor of love for me, but it is can see the ugliness of people, and there were people that were blaming Bruce Springsteen that he's forcing them to get vaccinated to see his show, and we're like, No, that's the state of New York. I mean, that's the city of New York. This has got, I mean, Bruce has got some power, but he doesn't have that kind of power, guys. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So Dan, you growing up, let's talk about your growing up there in Jersey. What kind of music was your family listening to as a
Yeah.
kid? What were you hearing?
As a kid, what I was hearing versus what my parents were hearing, my
Maybe,
parents
yep,
were,
both.
they were, yeah, I mean, it definitely differed at some point. You know, um, yeah, they were listening to the 60s and, whatever was coming out of that. My dad's a big Frank Sinatra fan.
Okay.
Springsteen was not something that was in our household very much. Uh, but personally, I grew up on like just pop of the 2000s. I think
Yeah.
Eminem was really big. It was an angry young man.
Yeah.
And I listened to a lot of hard rock. And I really do feel that Bruce Springsteen is, I mean, yeah, you have some of his bigger pop hits and his, you know, um, just those famous staples that everyone knows: Born in the USA, Glory Days, Dancing in the Dark. Not that those songs don't have deeper meaning, they obviously do.
Yeah.
But people kind of latch on to the choruses. Um, but I think to understand, like, oh, Born in the USA is actually about Vietnam vets and how poorly we treat them, or to go into an album like Nebraska or certain songs on Darkness on the Edge of Town. Um, there's or just like to recognize that The Rising is like just such a political album about 9/11, or Wrecking Ball about
Yeah.
the economy. There's so much depth to that, and he does it on a political level and on a personal level, depending
Yeah.
on the song, depending on the album. So he wasn't someone I really got into until I was 25 years old. um,
So yeah, that's a perfect segue. Can you can you remember what got you into Bruce? And if you can, articulate why his music spoke to you.
yeah. I think I got into Bruce. But like I said, I heard the pop hits when I was probably a little bit younger. But
Sure.
when I was 25, it was actually a pretty bad period in my life.
Okay.
I had just gotten off a freelance job and was looking for something better, but I was out of shape, overweight, unhappy with where I was professionally, personally, broken up with somebody. And I kind of took one last stand, and I decided that I was going to just do everything possible uh, to get back in shape, to get the best job I could, and to really fulfill my potential. And a lot of those themes are pretty present, I think, across Darkness on the Edge of Town. Um, and It was an album that just really resonated with me, the earnestness. You probably have a lot of listeners who are, would say that Born to Run is their favorite album, or it's the album
Yeah.
that got them into Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. I don't know. There's a lot of idealism in that album, and
Yeah.
I think I was past that point, frankly.
Yeah.
Um, and Darkness on the Edge of Town is sort of about acknowledging that idealism, not wanting to let go, and seeing where you have to compromise, as we were sort of talking about compromise earlier.
Yeah.
Um, but just trying to find a better life for yourself, and seeing what's important to you, and taking that stand. As I think he literally actually says on the title track. And then I would also listen to Nebraska a lot, which you would think is one of his hardest albums to get into.
Hmm.
Um, but that one, it's just so desperate, and it's so sobering. There's an intensity to it, and I'm an intense person. Like I said, I was really into exercise at that time. I just wanted to I could use that intensity,
Yeah.
on the treadmill or lifting weights or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I and we're joking about this, and I promise I won't do this the whole time, right? Like, but you
No
really
worries.
were. We've got one last chance to make it real, right? You were sitting there, just you know, like in the dance in the dark, where I don't like anything about myself, right? And you're going, okay, let me
Right.
reinvent myself. Let me do that. And there is a lot about that and about his music that I think speaks to um, many of us, that it's personal to us, and I agree. Any band has that. I mean, there are people that adore, anywhere from Frank Zappa to Leonard Cohen to you know Billy Joel to Bob Dylan, on and on and on. But for us, there's just something about Bruce and his lyrics. um when do you, when you started listening to him, how did you go about it? Did you just happen to run across an album or two, and then once you like took a bite of the apple, you just went all in and was searching for albums and doing research and digging in? Talk to me a little about that, Dan.
So I think, you know, one thing that I think is kind of interesting is when I was 18 years old, it was one of the best summers of my life. It was me
Okay.
going from college into, or going from high school into college.
Okay.
And I didn't have a lot of responsibilities at that time. So I was just riding my bike around New Jersey. I literally got to Central Jersey. And you get to Central Jersey because you see a bunch of farms and horses, and you're like, holy crap, where am I?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and I would listen to CDs because I guess I'm that old now,
Yes.
that you could rent from one of 75 different interconnected libraries. And I was
Yes.
trying to follow Rolling Stones. I think it was 500 best albums of all time. And I think at that time, because I know they revised the list, but I do think that Born to Run was the highest ranked Springsteen album.
Okay.
Um, I heard it. I sort of dismissed it. The band that I had latched onto was actually U2.
Okay.
Um, and I listen to them a lot. And they have, a pretty deep connection, I think, with Bruce. They share a lot of the same themes. They came out around the same time. They have a lot of, similarly intense music. Um, Not always intense, but,
Yeah.
very personal and also political. And then I saw them actually perform with Bruce that summer in 2015 on their Innocence and Experience tour at
Okay.
Madison Square Garden. And that was a moment that really kind of changed things for me. I actually kind of see it as the transition between that band, which I was so passionate about and felt like I could relate to in so many ways, and Springsteen.
Mm.
Sorry if that
That's
doesn't really answer your
No,
question.
that did. That is a very good transition. Um, One of my best friends um, really loved the band,
Mhm.
and went, rented The Last Waltz, and because of that, Dylan plays, in that movie, and he went, "Oh, I like this," and ended up he's now a massive Dylan fan, and he always jokes about who, that even though the band had been, involved in doing other things, um, you wouldn't have thought of him as, them as the gateway to finding, Bob Dylan.
Right.
Um, so I always like to preface this, Dan, with the amount of times you've seen him perform live is not a fair barometer of what kind of fan you are or how big of a fan you
Right.
are. Because depending on where you live, depending on a lot of other circumstances, it just doesn't work out. But have you been able to see him live?
Yeah, I have a poster for it too. I saw him in Hartford in 2016
Okay.
during the River Tour,
Okay.
and I would have seen him at MetLife the following year, but I thought it was the same. There was a little bit of confusion, I think, maybe on the part of marketing, or maybe it was just my
Yeah.
misunderstanding. I thought it was the same tour,
Okay.
which I guess it kind of was, but
Yeah.
he was not playing the River in full. And if I
Right.
had known that, I would have gone,
Yeah.
because who
Sure.
wouldn't want to see a Bruce Springsteen concert?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I felt like I'd seen the river played. And to be honest, it's not, one of my favorite
Yeah,
albums. I really do like it, but I felt like once was enough to just go through all that. Um, but yeah, he did like 4 shows and I missed it and I kicked myself for that. I've only seen him 3 times, and 2 of those were Springsteen on Broadway.
yeah,
Um, I will say that the Hartford show is really cool. It really reintroduced me to Born in the USA, which, even though it's like the most popular album in the world, I feel like among Bruce fans, it's
sure.
uh, kind of underrated actually in a way because
Yeah,
it's people just kind of dismiss it as like, oh, that's the one with all the pop hits and the
yes.
big rock songs, but it's great. It has some really deep songs, themes. Um, and I was listening to Cover Me, and I just was like, that guitar is just so amazing. And it really got me back into that record. In addition to hearing the River live, I just listened to that album over and over, every single track, just trying to memorize the lyrics before the concert. Um, so that was great. And then, but the Springsteen on Broadway shows this past summer, they were really those were really the two experiences um, that I guess where I feel like I knew his whole discography. I really knew the music. The only track I didn't know was The Wish,
Mm,
which was I don't even think it made it on a tracks. It was just some rare outtake he had made about his mother.
yeah.
Um,
And I believe it is on tracks, but you're right.
yeah,
Um, well, and that must have hit you pretty hard, The Wish, huh? Because in a few minutes, you're going to tell me a story that you shared about your own mother and Bruce.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't remember um, exactly how I got involved with this, but yeah, I guess that's sort of what uh, I guess I've been sort of dancing around this whole time is that was like a big part of this whole pandemic for me.
Yeah.
I know it's been really surreal for a lot of other people, but my mother had been diagnosed with cancer in March of 2019,
Okay.
brain cancer, and it was grade 3, so things were pretty stable and pretty normal.
Mm,
And then it recurred as a glioblastoma, which is the same brain cancer that killed Ted Kennedy.
mm,
It killed John McCain. It killed Joe Biden's son.
mm.
And it hit my mom. And my father and I had to just take care of her as best we could. It was so hard to know that there was something literally eating away at her brain.
Yeah.
And we could see each week or each month, like things were sort of just declining rapidly. And she just was not herself physically or cognitively. And it was really hard. By mid-March, she was just like not, she was unable to verbalize anything.
Mm,
Um, she was basically confined to a wheelchair and she was confined to a bed. We had to do all these medical things for her. And I mean, graphic things like we had to help her, you know, transition to the commode and pull down her diaper and
yeah.
replace her diaper, all these, things that you would think a nurse would do or an aide would do. But it just felt like she's this really important person in our life. So we should do that for her.
Yeah.
I just say that because I mean, not just to express, the intensity of it, especially in the middle of a pandemic, but I do think that that's something that unfortunately you hear a lot of in New Jersey. And I don't know if that's something that you really experience as much throughout the rest of the country. Is just the incredible number of cancer cases, not necessarily this form of cancer, but
Yeah.
it's really unbelievable. But she
Yeah.
passed.
It,
Oh, sorry.
no, no, no. I was just going to say, yeah, I'm I'm 5 years past having colon cancer.
Oh my God.
And so, luckily they caught it early. They, had surgery, they took it out. I had to go through, 8 rounds of chemo. And it's it's not haha funny, but it is like after the third round of chemo, I mentioned to the nurse, I'm like, this just seems to be getting harder.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't this, I be used to this? And she's like, oh no, honey, it's going to get worse every time. I'm like, oh, she goes, we don't want to tell you that to begin with to make you depressed. And um, so, and then earlier this year, they thought I had stomach cancer. Luckily, I did not, but I had to have surgery to take the tumor out of my stomach. And I say this because once you've had cancer yourself or a family member of yours has cancer, you realize, holy crap, it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
And you feel for all these family members because you've been there either as a, and in a lot of ways, my wife will say, I take nothing against your fight. You were the one that had to go to chemo, you were the one that had to have surgery, you're the one that was sick. But in a lot of ways, my battle as the spouse of a person fighting cancer was, I won't say as hard, but it was hard in itself. And so I'm not belittling what your mom went through, but you and your dad had your own journey and own challenges, right? Because you've got to be strong for your mom when we're all little kids in our own way and we just want our mom to go to and hug us and tell us it's going to be okay. And she can't.
Yeah, it was I mean, she literally couldn't. I'm really sorry to hear that, by the way. I did not know that.
Oh, that's okay. I'm fine. I'm in, I'm as I'm close to remission. And like I said, and when I had the stomach surgery, um, I ended up getting free gastric bypass surgery. I make the joke. They thought I had a tumor in my stomach. The guy said, we're gonna have to take it out. But on the plus side, this is the same surgery we do to patients for gastric bypass.
Yeah.
So do you want to lose some weight? And I'm like, well, I don't hadn't planned on it, but it's that or get to keep the tumor. So yeah, so no, I am fine. Uh, but I know, listening to my wife and listening to my son, and having my own have lost my father and my stepfather and other things, in a lot of ways the supportive family, it's just as hard on them.
Yeah, I mean, we're still going through it. I
Yeah,
mean, we're three. I mean, the pandemic's exacerbated everything.
sure.
And now we're three people because my brother was living here at the time as well.
Yeah,
And we're all living under this one roof. And she passed in June, and we're just trying to figure out, oh wow, the heart of our family just like
yeah.
disappeared and she's gone.
I not to and if you don't want to talk about this, please tell me to move on and I'll cut this out. But were you, because I hear so many stories about in the midst of the pandemic, a loved one is in the hospital and they won't let you go in there and visit them. You can't be there because of all the COVID restrictions.
Yeah, no, you can keep it in. I mean, it's
Yeah,
I you get it, but you also don't get it, right? Because
yeah,
you feel like you're willing to take the rapid test or whatever it is. Or at that point, I had been vaccinated for months,
yeah,
actually, I think at least 2 months, um, or at least a month. Um, but yeah, like the hospitals at that point, like May or whatever it was, they were saying, you can only have one designated guest. So I would drive all the way to the hospital and they would just say, no, you can't go up there, and I'd be like, I have a mask, I'm vaccinated. Like, what else do you need? It's only the two of us, and nobody else is going to be here today. So it's really just me today. I had flowers for her, and they're like, well, we can take the flowers, we can take the chocolate, but you can't go up there. Um, and of course, they're medical professionals and they know what they're doing. But it hurts to, know the kind of situation that you're in and not be able to do anything. I'm sure a lot of, COVID family members felt the same way, because that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened to them. Their family members were just taken away in an ambulance. And some of them got better and came back, and some of them didn't.
Yeah.
And it's all very sudden, and it's heartbreaking, and it's hard. And especially when you don't have verbal communication with somebody,
Yeah.
it's it's just close to impossible.
So
But
Dan, you mentioned that you played her some Bruce music.
yeah, so
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 talk
what
to me about
happened?
that.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No, you're not
to
interrupting at
finish
all.
what I was saying, we were really kind of working around the clock, and at the end we had some aides come in. Um, but at a certain point, we knew what was going on, and hospice came in, and the night, it was very clear 4 days before she passed that she was going to pass. I had a friend come over. He's the most musically gifted guy I know. He performed a concert with me singing some of the songs. It was a mix of songs that my mother loved and a mix of songs that I loved. She loved the Rolling Stones. She loved Carole King. I loved U2, Nine Inch Nails, and Nick Cave, and Bruce Springsteen. We closed with "I'll See You in My Dreams," and it was just me and my friend singing it to her while he, played at the guitar. And then the night before she passed, I guess I must have known she was going to go. I played her 5 of my favorite songs that I thought might help her transition. I'm an atheist, I should probably mention.
Yeah.
And we had actually watched the Letter to You documentary, because it actually came out like 24 hours before the album came out,
Right.
back in November, October, whatever that was of last year. And so I started crying when they played "I'll See You in My Dreams" in that movie, and my mom rubbed my back and she said, "Don't cry. It's like the Lion King. It's the circle of life." So that was the second to last song that I played her that night, followed by "We Are Alive." So to me, those two songs are very much linked. And then the morning after, June 14th, which was just like 4 months ago, she passed while listening to her favorite record, which is Carole King's Tapestry. 2 weeks later, which, to me, I guess living in this ultra fast American society, I just thought that, oh, wow, it's so much time's already passed. It's over. I went to see Springsteen on Broadway thinking, like, oh, this could be the first happy experience I have, like following her passing. And thankfully, it was a funny show. It was a really funny show,
Yes.
especially when he starts cursing up a storm.
Yeah.
But it blew me away that he just said, "I'm not playing Born to Run. I'm going to end the show with I'll See You in My Dreams." And I started bawling. And it was, I had mentioned somehow, I had started talking to the guy sitting next to me about, my mom and what was going on. It's still a very confusing period, and just how to deal with this. And so he gave me a tap on the shoulder when they played "The Wish," thinking that would be the song that resonated with me. And I thought that way too.
Yeah, I would have guessed that too, right? Yeah.
But then when he pulled that out, which nobody was expecting, right?
Right.
I was bawling. I left the theater in tears. It was so emotional, and I don't believe in signs or anything like that, but it was just, it was somebody, an artist who I really respect, whose work I really love, that really communicates with me. And it felt like he was saying something that, and that's what's so hard. We are living right now. And that's why, I'm not sure how many conversations you've had where the pandemic has been talked about at all or extensively.
Yeah.
But we're living in a time of death. It's really the theme of the last 2 years. and it's really, really hard to confront. Um, and then just, I guess by coincidence, I mean, I guess because he's getting older, that's the album that Bruce Springsteen puts out, Letter to You. And it's recorded in 2019, and it comes out in the heart of the pandemic. And then he gets to play this song, when it seems like the pandemic is finally lifting, he finally plays the song to the public.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic just comes back, and we still have these weird sort of shutdowns. I think you can see a Broadway play. I saw a concert for the first time, like a real concert recently, but he spoke basically to the world, I think, with that album. And I don't think that's what he intended, because I think it was a very personal album about just reflecting on his career, his relationship with his fans, and his mortality. And then it just resonated in a way that none of us, could have anticipated. And I think that's the best song on the album. I think it's the most profound song on the album. I think when we look back, and we have a greatest hits album or playlist or whatever it might be, frankly, after he passes, that'll be the closing song, because it's just such a bookend to something in some way.
So a couple things, Dan. One, I spoke at a couple of related stories, but a friend of mine named Rick Lisco died several years ago, and I quoted Land of Hope and Dreams at his funeral. And I've always said that, and when my dad died, I quoted Land of Hope and Dreams, and I kind of tongue-in-cheek said, and I hope years from now, my son will quote Land of Hope and Dreams at my funeral, right? 50, 60 years from now. And then you hear, I'll see you in my dreams, and you go, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's a different song. So I'll share you a story just because it feels like this kind of discussion. So my friend Rick played the guitar, and he was talking to his wife Beth, and she's like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm learning a new song. It's an old song of James Taylor's, but I've never learned how to play it, so I'm playing with it." She goes, "Oh, that's interesting," and she moved on, and he ended up having an embolism and died. And so when she went, it was the "You Can Close Your Eyes" by James Taylor. And some of the lyrics are, "So close your eyes, you can close your eyes, it's all right. I don't know no love songs, I can't sing the blues anymore, but I can still sing this song. You can sing this song when I'm gone." And so she asked me to quote that at his funeral. So I'm sitting in New Orleans. My wife and I have eaten too much food and just was having a great time. And Jackson Browne opened, and James Taylor played next. And the very last song he did is "You Can Close Your Eyes." And I just started bawling. I mean, I just out of nowhere, I thought of my friend Rick, and I thought of all the people that I've lost, and all the people we've lost in this pandemic. And I just was luckily it was dark and I was doing this. So I can only imagine hearing "I'll See You in My Dreams" after having that one of the last songs your mom listened to. I can only imagine the emotion you went through.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the power of music, right?
Yeah.
It speaks to, and even that was the thing, even after she lost her, ability to speak, she would still hum along or, sing to some of her. That's why we had Carole King on repeat, like basically for 3 or 4 months. She would come out with a line 2 months after losing her voice. And we'd be like, where did that come from? And these songs, they stay with you, and the really beautiful ones, the ones that have true meaning and true power, they don't age. They're like great novels, right? I'm just looking at like or great art.
Yeah.
They just transcend time and they connect with you emotionally.
Yeah.
And if once we're gone, they'll continue on with the next generation.
Yeah.
And there are so many different Bruce Springsteen songs. You can say that about Land of Hope and Dreams. Absolutely is one of them.
Yeah.
Frankly, uh, I think that song, I associate that with, the inauguration, to
Yes.
be honest with you. Because he was, which, obviously that means it's a very powerful song if that's the song you're going to use
Yes.
to introduce the new president of the United States.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that's another beautiful aspect of these Bruce Springsteen songs. You can just interpret them in so many different ways. They can have so many different meanings. And I do think that when he played that, it was partially, speaking to the beautiful idea that America could be, but also to all the hardships that we had recently endured. I'm not as familiar with James Taylor. I
Yeah.
hope that was a cathartic experience for you.
It was very cathartic. It was. Um, Tell me a funny story about your mom.
My mom was a very funny person. She would look
Okay.
in the backyard. We had this huge glass window downstairs, and we have deer come by, we have rabbits come by, we have woodchucks come by. The deer especially clicked with her. We had a dog for a while who made his presence known whenever an animal would come by, and they'd kind of scatter if they heard him
Yeah.
barking too loud. But our dog had passed, and then this deer comes by, and he's got these great big antlers, and she decides to name him Bucky. I decide to name him Bruce. You can imagine why.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what, Mom, you're going through a lot right now. This was like a year ago. We'll keep it with Bucky. We'll keep it with Bucky. And I don't even know if it was the same deer. It could have been a different deer just showing up in the backyard. But she would communicate with him, and she'd have like full conversations for like 5 minutes, drink her coffee, eat her breakfast, whatever, and then just return to talking with him if he was just nibbling on grass or like eating a tree or brush or whatever it was doing. She loved animals, and she spoke to them all the time. And she would always use a very, childish voice, as if she were talking to a baby. But I really do think that, and they actually, they came closer. They were certainly intrigued by what they heard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend they understood it, but
Right.
I think it just speaks to the core sweetness of who she was. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, one thing I read in her, or I wrote about in her eulogy, she was a nurse for 40 years in New York City.
Wow.
And whenever there was even the smallest medical situation anywhere, she would just was like Clark Kent, ripping off his shirt and then turning into Superman. She would just start, not like physically pushing people back, but she would make her presence known. This is a woman who's 5 foot tall, and she starts screaming, "I'm a nurse, I'm a nurse, I'm a nurse." And then she would just like zero in on the person and, attend to like a scrape finger or whatever it was with antiseptic and a Band-Aid. Because again, she was that, nice, generous person who was just so attentive and cared so deeply.
And I know she appreciated, but it sounds like she was by nature a caregiver. And I know she was still trying to take care of y'all, even as she was fighting this horrible disease. I just know that just from listening to you talk and tell the stories. And I know that was hard for her because she wants to continue to take care of you guys.
Yeah. Which I think was kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because I think one way she wanted to protect us was by not, she thought that by sheer willpower, she could be one of the, less than 1% who overcomes this. And so she never really said goodbye. So it was kind of on us to do that. And by the time, things had progressed too far, she had had so much of her cognitive faculties had been taken away. It was just, yeah.
How's your dad doing?
He's playing piano at 9:15 at night, as you've probably heard.
Yes,
And
I did. Thought I heard a little music. That's good.
yeah, and screaming and, watching the Yankees. And well, actually, Yankees lost, which makes
Yeah.
things even worse.
Yes.
So now he's watching the Astros, I think.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not sure.
Yeah. Astros and the
Uh,
Red Sox. Yeah.
yeah. So
That's awesome. That's
well,
good.
yeah, he's having a hard time with it. We're having a hard time with it.
Sure.
But, I'm gonna go back to New York. I'm gonna make one last stand there, and then I think I'm gonna see if there are other places maybe where I might be a better fit if it doesn't work out.
Okay.
I don't know. I think the city is going to come back. I think we'll rebound as a family. I think we've definitely suffered a loss that is not going to,
Yeah.
like music's not going to heal it, or it can't heal it. There are some things in life that you just have to deal with. You're hit with them.
Yeah. Once again, I found a lot of comfort. I was, we've lost my wife's parents, both of them. We
Sorry.
lost my dad, my stepdad. I was really close with my mom's parents, my grandparents, and it was the first time I heard Bruce talk about this was on that the Apollo show that they broadcast live on Sirius XM, right? And he's doing My City of Ruins, and he goes, after he named the band, he said, "Are we missing anybody?" And that are we missing anybody? And he says, "Well, if you're here and we're here, they're here."
Yeah.
And boy, I called my mom, and I and and my mom, God love her, sometimes like I got all choked up the first time I heard the wish, and I was trying to call my mom and explaining to her how this was about Bruce's mother, and how I was so glad that I still had her in my life, and she didn't get it, and I just ended up dropping the story and like, "How you doing, mom? How's," I just
Yeah.
because she just wasn't getting it. um but I did tell her, I said, and I think about that anytime we're together, like a family, like around Thanksgiving or another holiday.
Yeah.
I always think of that, if we're here, if you're here and we're here, they're here. And I feel their spirits. Um, and and you mentioned earlier, like I don't know if there's an afterlife. I don't I have a complicated relationship right now with my spiritual life, but I like to think somehow, at least through our memories, their essence lives on. If no
Yeah.
other else, through our memories, they continue to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very beautiful way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
A very healthy and comfortable way of thinking about it.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't know. It makes me think of We Are Alive, and
Yes.
which is kind of the antithesis of we of oh
See
my
you in
God,
my
I'll see you in
dreams.
my
Yeah.
dreams. I'm sorry, I don't know
No, no,
why.
you're good.
Um, because it's just so, it's just like we are alive. Yes, all these people have passed, they've come before us, they made their marks, and then they fell. But you know, let your mind rest easy, sleep well, my friend. It's only our bodies that betray us in the end, and our memories continue to carry on. These people, however they passed, whatever they suffered through, we can try and rectify it and make a better world. And that's that's why I'm trying to fight so much against this form of cancer. Just trying to raise awareness of it, trying to raise funds for the National Brain Tumor Society. If I can plug that, I would.
Yeah, please. In fact, Dan, if you will send me a link to whatever organization you recommend supporting, I'll make sure that's in the podcast notes. and so
Thank
that
you.
people
Yeah,
could see.
that would be that would actually be really meaningful. So I really appreciate
Yeah,
that.
no, I'd be glad to do it. And
Um,
let us know, your mom's name so that we can make a donation in her honor. I know that
Very kind of
I'm
you.
not the only one, but I know a lot of my listeners would love to do that.
I
So
really
that's neat.
appreciate that.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
Um, so I you've kind of covered a lot of how much his music has spoken to you and meant to you. And I often talk about, albums and songs that mean to you, and you've already shared that, and you've shared it so well, Dan. Um, is there any other story you want to tell me? Is there other thoughts you want to give about Bruce's music, or really anything?
Well, I'll just say this, as much as I've talked about Letter to You and, the impact that has had on my life, and also, um, Darkness in Nebraska. I would say that those two, Darkness in Nebraska,
Yeah,
are my favorite albums.
yeah,
And it really flips day to day which one resonates with me the most. I guess on my more hopeless days, I tend towards Nebraska. But I think that there is, despite all the bleakness, there are traces of optimism for sure. I mean, it ends on an optimistic note, Darkness on the Edge of Town. And I think there are probably a lot of people who are going through something similar to what I've gone through, what my family's gone through.
yeah,
They've just been going through a really tough time. Someone someone in some conversation just said like, hey, the last 2 years have just flat out sucked for everyone,
yeah,
like on this entire planet. And I was like, yeah, other than like maybe Australia, I
yeah,
think that's true. Um, I would just encourage people to listen to that album
yeah,
again, because I think that first of all, it rocks. I mean, it's just fantastic. There's a lot in there about these ideal. You can see the seeds start to grow about his ideals for America
yeah,
in songs like "The Promised Land," and how much faith he has in the country. But you also see, there's the piano again. You see that he's not ready to give up on himself or his dreams.
yeah,
And yeah, it's been a big setback for all of us, but we're going to get through this. Maybe not fully intact, maybe not the same, but we're going to have to keep fighting for the things that we believe in and just prioritize them more because we've lost 2 years. So
yeah.
don't give up. I think that's an album that, really pushes that message. Um, Sorry if I droned on too long,
No,
but
no, no. That was well said. That was perfect. Well said, my friend. So, Dan, I understand that you've got something special coming up in November as a way to bring awareness to the disease and raise funds. Talk to me a little about that.
yeah, I'm running. I've run a lot of marathons, but I'm running New York. It's going to be very special this year because they had to cancel the one last year. I mean, New York City Marathon is always very special because it's a celebration of not just the five boroughs, but of saying, New York, you can't defeat me. It may be
Right.
hard professionally, it may be hard in terms of dating, it may be hard in terms of, living in a tiny apartment that costs $1,600 with rats running around underneath, but you still can't beat me. So that I've always, and you're running 26 miles, and the origin of the marathon story comes from somebody who died after doing that, like
Yeah.
immediately. They didn't have Gatorade in ancient
Right.
Greece. But one of the things that people do is they run these races on behalf of charities. And after my mom passed, I got in touch with the National Brain Tumor Society, and I said, hey, I'm already qualified, but I would love to run on your behalf. People there could not be nicer. They gave me a singlet. I'm part of the team this year. So it's, just a wonderful charity to look into just in general. But I'm running on behalf of them as well, and raising funds that way.
How will you honor your mom? Are you gonna write like is her name on the shirt, on the singlet? Do you have it inside your shoes? Do you have something of hers you're gonna wear or carry?
Yeah, the last time I ran this in 2019, she was still healthy, and I wrote
Mhm.
"I love you, Mom" on the back of my singlet.
Yeah,
So I wasn't affiliated with the charity at that time, but that's what I did, and I was proud of it, and it looked
yeah,
cool, and I still have that shirt. Now, what I'm going to do is, in addition to, we have a racing shirt that
yeah.
has the National Brain Tumor Society logo on it. My father, I was raised in a Jewish household. We had to tear something. It was like a little bow when the funeral was happening. I still have that. I'm going to put that onto my singlet when I run. And I have a few other items that my mother has given me, or, just little buttons from things that we did together that I'm able to just attach to that shirt. And one thing I didn't actually discuss earlier, you're not going to be able to see this if you're listening, but I have this flag that I had created for the Women's March.
Okay.
Um, it says, "Love and kindness light my way."
Mm,
It's an American flag. Love and kindness was the Hillary campaign slogan.
right.
Sorry, for those of you who are not Democrats, it's my belief.
Yeah.
And Light My Way was a U2 song I love very much. And I got some of my favorite musicians to sign it. I got The Edge to sign it. I got John Landau to actually sign it after Springsteen on Broadway. My
Nice.
mom, yeah, my mom signed it. So I'm going to carry this with me, and I'm going to cross the finish line with it. And I'm going to make sure she loved the flag. She loved the message on it, and her name's on it now. So when I cross that finish line, everyone will be able to see it.
That's great. Like I said, we'll include the link to that fundraising on the show. And I'm sure that I'll see you in my dreams. We Are Alive are two of the songs that will be on your pre-race, you know, getting ready sync, like, whatever playlist you have to get yourself ready. Well, I'm sure those two songs will be on there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have a playlist all planned out. It's like I don't plan to get married in this lifetime,
Yeah.
but it's like planning the soundtrack for a wedding, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. No Retreat, No Surrender was a
Yeah.
big one, because a lot of um, people who are fighting cancer and other illnesses will do that. Bruce's No Surrender, and hashtag No Retreat, No Surrender, just as never to give up fighting. So we will be thinking of you on the day of the marathon, and when I see the news coverage, I'm going to think of you, Dan, and I'm going to smile. So
I
thank you
I
for sharing that.
appreciate that. I will probably be too exhausted to think properly by the time I cross the finish line, but
Yeah.
I'll try to think of everything that's going on, all the support, and thank you for that.
I tell you what, let's plan on it. Let's have you back on after the race, and we'll
Sure.
do a quick one just to talk about the day. I would
Yeah,
love
we can
just to
do
kind of
that.
do a post-race kind of episode where we just talk about and just share your feelings and everything went on. I would love to hear that. I know my listeners would too.
Sure. You got to give me a couple days after the
No, no,
race.
no, no. I'm talking. Middle of November. That's fine. 1st of December is fine. That's good. Okay. All
All
right.
right, we'll figure it out. I look
Uh,
forward to reconnecting. Thank you
Sounds
so
good.
much for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for joining me and for sharing so much of yourself.
Yeah, it's
This
a
means a
pleasure.
great deal to me. And I am. What was your mom's name?
My mom was named Iris, and
Iris.
I was talking about U2 earlier. That's another song I'd recommend listening to is Iris off their 2014 album Songs of Innocence,
Yeah.
that because it's her namesake. It was Bono's mom's name.
Hmm.
Um, again, the power of music.
Yeah,
But
it truly is.
yeah, thank you very much. This was actually it was great to actually like get this out and verbalize it. And
Yeah.
I appreciate your time very much.
No problem. All right, before I let you go, we're going to lighten things up, maybe,
Okay.
depending on
Yeah,
your answer.
sure.
I end every episode with the Mary question. So if you're a friend of Dan's and you're listening to this episode and you don't normally listen to the podcast, thank you for listening. I hope you check some other episodes out. Um, Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher from the Philadelphia area. He's recently retired.
Okay.
And before he retired from teaching, he would spend 2 days every year of the school year with his honors English teach class, the seniors, and they would break apart Thunder Road as a poem. They
Okay.
would lead the lyrics, they would talk about the imagery, they would compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And at the end of the 2 days, Jay looks at his class and asks the question, does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road? Dan, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Yeah, I think she absolutely has to. You gotta take chances in life. I mean, it's really hard. It's scary when you think about the magnitude of it. Because you're leaving behind something that's really comfortable and something that you know and you're familiar with and your routine, and it's so easy to just get caught up in that. But I think that's another thing. I'm sorry I have to bring it up again, but the pandemic just drives home is
Yeah.
time is limited, opportunities are limited. Just go for what you believe in. And I would like to think that, like I said, it's an optimistic album, which is why it's not so well suited for me. But I think that's why she would get in the car. She would say, let's do it. Let's try it out. Let's see where it goes. And I think when Bruce was writing it, he was probably thinking the same thing and thinking that things would work out, or at least it would be an adventure. And that's what you're going to get if you get in the car, metaphorically speaking. If you try things out, you're going to have an adventure, even if it's not successful. So keep going and keep trying.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Um, Dan, this was great. I'm going to end with I'll see you in my dreams where all the summers have come to an end. I'll see you in my dreams where we'll meet and then live and love again. I'll see you in my dreams, yeah, up around the river bend, for death is not the end. And I'll see you in my dreams. For
Thank
Iris.
you very much for quoting that, and thank you for the conversation.
No problem. Listeners, you go get vaccinated. Remember to wear your mask. Remember to wash your hands. Remember to be good to each other, because that's the only way we're going to get through this. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, listeners, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts, as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now, who does? You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference. You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.